We've got a loaded show to get to today, but first I want to show some love to two people that sent in super thanks here on the channel, Jason B. and Mr. Jeffrey. Thank you guys so much for going above and beyond and showing some support to the channel. And if you want to get a shout out on a future episode of Falcons Today, send a super thanks in. But now let's talk about the latest Justin Fields rumors. Call me Andy Cohen because we have some drama to get to on today's show. And it all started yesterday, if you've been living under a rock, when Justin Fields, and I hate that I even use that expression because no one should be categorized living under a rock for not keeping up with who Justin Fields follows or doesn't follow on social media. But that's where we are right now because yesterday it was exposed that Justin Fields is not following the Chicago Bears on Instagram, and people ran with that. And then other people noticed that Justin Fields isn't just no longer following the Bears, his team, on Instagram. He's also following three key members of the Atlanta Falcons, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, which gave a lot of ammunition for people to talk about Fields to the Falcons. But then yesterday, we got a report, or I should say report, but we found out that Justin Fields was going on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, a part of the 33rd Team Network. And on that podcast, they asked him, what's with you unfollowing the Chicago Bears? Now, this was an hour-long podcast, and they talked about a wide range of topics, to just general NFL stuff, to music, to Ohio State. But of course, they asked, what's with you unfollowing the Bears on Instagram? And here's what Fields said. Why do people take social media so seriously? I still mess with the Bears. I'm just trying to take a little break. I unfollowed the Bears and the NFL. I'm not trying to have football on my timeline. I think social media for players in 2024 is actually a little bit above just grain of salt, right? I don't think people should make mountains out of social media followings and unfollowings. But we are in a generation of athletes that grew up with a Facebook account by the time they were born. So I do think it's much more important than what it was for athletes just 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I do think there is a little bit of truth and a little bit of something when players go on social media and follow, unfollow, comment, like, things like that, because it's not guys in 2008 that just have big fat thumbs and don't realize what they're clicking. Like, these players grew up with social media accounts. These are calculated moves. These are big decisions, or at least sometimes they are. In this instance, it didn't seem super calculated, but I do think there was a little truth to, you wanted to get the NFL off your timeline. I get that. He said he's kind of tired of seeing, what are the Bears going to do? Are they going to take Caleb? Are they going to draft this guy? Are they going to stick with Justin Fields? He wants to go and enjoy some time off. He talked about taking a trip to Europe, going to the Netherlands, going to Amsterdam, and he doesn't want to have the NFL all over his timeline. And I understand that, but at the same time, he kind of put himself in a bit of a word hole when he's like, sometimes you unfollow girls on Instagram, and that doesn't mean you're no longer messing with them. And it's like, yeah, but you only do that when you're single. You're not single. You're with the Bears. And he's like, I guess it's not a good analogy to make. So that was one quote that kind of got spread on social media. But he did talk about Atlanta in general, and this was a little bit later on in the podcast. And he said the only con of coming home, and this is what he kind of opened up with, is everyone's hitting you up, right? Everyone's blowing up your phone looking for tickets. Now, I am sure that's not going to actually get in any sort of way of Fields getting excited about coming back to Atlanta if the Falcons do trade for him. And he also was very nice and complimentary of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and this Falcons defense. So ultimately, when it comes to the social media part of this video, we can kind of put a bow on it going, I don't think it's nothing, but I don't think that's going to be the ultimate driving force into Fields is done in Chicago. I think Fields has been done in Chicago for weeks, ever since the Bears got the first overall pick, because they were not going to pass on Caleb Williams. Now, I do think there is something to him following a bunch of Falcons players on social media. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was college teammates with Drake London, asked Justin Fields, why are you following Drake London? Like, do you know Drake? And he's like, no, not really, but I don't know. I just followed him. And he's like, you just followed a Falcons wide receiver just for the sake of following a Falcons wide receiver? Or have you caught wind before it's going to become public to everyone that the Bears are going to move on from you and the Falcons are very interested, and it's almost just a matter of time at this point? So with that being said, let's switch gears and let's talk about Fields' destinations, because The Athletic came out with an article today that outlined 5 teams that could trade for Justin Fields. And no surprise, the Atlanta Falcons were on that list, along with the Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New England Patriots, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at the same time, ESPN dropped an article talking about what the Bears might do with the first overall pick in Justin Fields. And the Atlanta Falcons, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were all picked as trade destinations for Fields. So I don't think I'm presenting any breaking new rumors to you guys watching that Fields to the Falcons has been a long rumored destination. I talked about it all the way back in October, and I still think this is what's ultimately going to happen come March. Now, we're going to talk more about this subject in just a moment. I've got some new angles and spins to talk about when it comes to Justin Fields to the Falcons, so stick around. But really quickly, we are closing in on our goal before free agency kicks off on March 11th, which is 19,500 subscribers. So make sure you join the fastest growing Atlanta Falcons YouTube channel out there. Now, I don't think I'm going to convince any of you that are deep in the camp of we don't want Justin Fields to the Falcons. But for those of you in the middle, a little bit on the fence, it's no surprise I am an advocate for Justin Fields. I think he is a very good quarterback, and I ultimately think that his 3 years in Chicago, it had some ups, it had some downs, but I think a big reason for the lack of consistency has been the coaching staff. It has been very tumultuous. He has had 2 different head coaches in 3 years, going from Matt Nagy to Matt Eberflus. That involves multiple coaching staff changes, new offensive coordinators, everything, new offenses, and ultimately, the current coaching regime, just a bunch of idiots. Matt Eberflus is one of the worst head coaches in football. How he still has a job is beyond me. Luke Getsy was fired as an offensive coordinator because he was an awful offensive coordinator in my eyes, that for the beginning portion of the season didn't lean into Fields' strengths. And once they started doing that, surprise, surprise, he torches the Broncos for 300-plus yards, a couple of touchdowns. He throws 3 touchdown passes the next week to DJ Moore. Like, once they started leaning into Fields and what he does best, they had a lot of success. And then, unfortunately, he has a thumb injury, kind of puts him behind the 8 ball a little bit. He comes back, and he's a big part of why Chicago ended the year winning a lot more games than they did to start the season. So I've got 5 big reasons why I like Fields for the Falcons specifically. 1, elite running abilities. Like, he is the best rushing quarterback we have seen since Michael Vick in a single season. He's right there with Lamar Jackson for his ability to improvise and think on his feet and extend plays and scramble for first downs. I mean, that's just one of the best attributes you can look for in a quarterback. But, of course, that does come with a bit of a price when it comes to the hits they take. Incredible arm talent. I think as football fans, just at the lowest level, we think if you're a really good rusher, then you can't be that good of a passer. That's not the case with Justin Fields. Like, he's got one of the strongest arms in football. He's got the downfield accuracy. He has dropped passes in the bucket, way down for the first down marker. He's got playmaking abilities. The knocks on Justin Fields are fair knocks, which is he is turnover prone. He holds on to the football too long. And every once in a while, he tries to go for the home run play instead of taking what the defense gives him. But I think with better coaching and a better offensive line, 2 of which the Atlanta Falcons have compared to Chicago, that Justin Fields can be a lot more successful. Plus, it's a homecoming, right? He's from Kennesaw, went to Harrison. It'd be a nice homecoming coming back to the Peach State where he started his collegiate career off before transferring to Ohio State. So do you want to trade for Fields? Just surface level. We'll talk about what it would cost to get for Fields in just a second, but just right off the bat here, yes or no, do you want to see Atlanta trade for Justin Fields? Now, I want to run through the Falcons' quarterback options at this point because it's not just Justin Fields. I think option number 1 is, can you get a top 3 quarterback? Can you get a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, a Jaden Daniels? There's 2 ways to do this. If you believe one of them will fall to you at number 8, then you stay put at number 8 and you get a guy there. Of course, you run the risk of passing on Justin Fields in March if April rolls around and one of these 3 guys does not fall to you to number 8. And the Bears, Commanders, and Patriots all in the top 3 are not interested in trading out of their top 3 picks because they want to take these 3 quarterbacks like we saw in Justin Fields' draft class when it went Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance in that order. I'm also going to add, to jump from 8 to 1 to 2 to 3, it's going to be expensive. Like, it was expensive. It was extremely expensive for the Panthers to move up and get Bryce Young, for the Niners to move up and get Trey Lance. But from what I'm hearing, with how highly touted this quarterback draft class is, the teams in the top 3 know this. So there is a big tax that's going to be placed on, if you want to move up, you are giving us a haul. And I don't know if Atlanta is going to fall in love with any of these 3 quarterbacks to know, let's bank the entire future on them. So that's option number 1, or path number 1, we should say. Path number 2, do you love a second-tier quarterback, right? I think this is the natural thought of progression for the Falcons as they evaluate their quarterback position. If they don't think they can get a quarterback in the top tier at number 8, and they don't believe they will be able to trade up for one, what about a J.J. McCarthy, a Michael Penix, or a Bo Nix? Now, these are going to be quarterbacks who will likely be available at number 8 and will likely be available in round 2 as well. But I don't want to see the Falcons pick any of these guys at the 8th overall pick. I'm just not that certain about any of them be worthy of a top 10 pick. And Atlanta, for a third straight year, third straight year is picking top 10. You can't miss top 10 picks. If you miss top 10 picks, it was already bad enough the season prior, and now you miss an opportunity to get yourself out of that hole a little bit of the 7 and 10 cycle they have been in. And I don't think any of these guys are guarantees or close to enough. I mean, there's no such thing as a guarantee, but just none of these 3 players are players I would bet on with the 8th overall pick. Now, we have 2 more stops to look at for the Falcons quarterback flow chart. But first, I do want to shout out our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Now, there are no more football games. We have the NBA All-Star break wrapping up soon. But if you want to get started with Prize Picks, get started today because it is daily fantasy made easy. All you do is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, for all the Braves fans watching right now, or just baseball fans in general, if you want to get in your season-long stat projections, go to Prize Picks right now and join me, because I'm just taking the more on all these bad boys. That way, whether it's May, it's June, August, September, I've always got a season-long rooting interest, and every single dinger is going to be one less they got to get to. So, if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me, and you can double what you put in for 2-player selections. And you can go all the way up to 15x what you put in if you get 6 predictions correct. So, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, I have put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Moving on to stop number 3 on the Falcons quarterback flow chart. Stop number 1, can you get a top 3 quarterback? If you learned during the combine that none of the top 3 guys are going to be there at number 8 and none of the top 3 teams want to move, then you move on to the second tier. And if you don't like any of the top or the second tier quarterbacks enough to invest in them to be your franchise quarterback, or at least want to have them start 2024, then you move to stop number 3, which in my eyes is Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins, right? Fields, the top trade candidate for a quarterback this offseason, and Kirk Cousins, the number 1 free agent quarterback. Now, the Falcons have been linked to both quarterbacks several times by various outlets and NFL insiders. Personally, I'm rolling with Justin Fields. Why? Kirk Cousins is a lot more accomplished, and he's a much more of a safer bet in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I said this in my last video, two videos ago, and this might be an unpopular opinion with some, but I don't think the Falcons are just a quarterback away where Kirk Cousins can step in here and have this team not just in the playoffs, but competing in the playoffs, right? I'm not interested in the Falcons being the 7th seed for the first time in 5 years or whatever, and then not going to the playoffs again for another 5 years. But hey, that one season with Cousins, they got to the playoffs. No, you are making a move to win playoff games. And I think there is more construction that needs to be done on this roster at edge rusher, at wide receiver, that Kirk Cousins is not going to step in here and be the thing that puts it all together, which is why I like Justin Fields, because he has that long-term upside, right? He's a decade younger than Kirk Cousins. He's not coming off a torn Achilles. So to me, the long-term upside for Justin Fields outweighs the short-term upside with Kirk Cousins because I don't think Kirk Cousins is the final piece of the puzzle for the Atlanta Falcons. I think there is more work to be done. And if it doesn't work out with Justin Fields, it's a much lower risk because Kirk Cousins is going to cost you maybe $90 million, whereas Justin Fields will cost you maybe a second. Stop number 4 on this bus is we suck again. I don't want to think what happens if these 3 things don't work out. If Atlanta can't get a top 3 quarterback, if they don't like anyone in the second-tier QBs, and they can't get Fields or Cousins, it's going to be awful again. So pick a quarterback for me, Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins. I roll with Justin Fields. If Atlanta was like a team that limped into the playoffs last year and had a close game, maybe beat the Eagles kind of like the Buccaneers, but Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke really slowed them down, all right, then I can get behind, insert Kirk Cousins, and you could catch fire for a season or 2, right? And maybe who knows? But they were a 7-10 team. There are more issues than just the quarterback position. Now, ESPN came out with trade ideas for the teams they linked Justin Fields to. And for the Falcons, it was very straight up. It was Atlanta's second-round pick for Justin Fields. I think it might cost a little bit more than that, but maybe ultimately it is just a round 2 pick. And if it is a little bit more, I'm not going to let that get in the way of Atlanta trading for Justin Fields. They're not going to give up their 8th overall pick, but if it's a 2nd and a future 4th or even a conditional 3rd, so be it. If Justin Fields works out as your franchise quarterback, who cares if it costs you a 2nd and a 4th? And if it doesn't work out, I don't think a 2nd and a 4th or maybe a 2nd and a future 3rd is going to be the thing that sinks the Atlanta Falcons franchise into a bottomless pit. Now, as for Justin Fields' long-term in Atlanta potential, I know some of you have gotten really worked up over, we don't want to pay Justin Fields. All right, let me just kind of kill that narrative for a moment. If Justin Fields comes to the Falcons and has a tremendous 2024 season, and Atlanta is ultimately the team that gets stuck with the Justin Fields bill and they're the ones that extend him, that's an awesome problem to have. Could you imagine your biggest problem as a franchise going into the offseason is, man, that quarterback is so good, we got to pay him. So there's a lot of teams that would love to be in that boat where their biggest problem is we got to pay someone because they're very good at their job. I'm not talking about paying a guy like Daniel Jones where you're a little bit uncertain. No, if you think Justin Fields is the guy and he ends up being the guy in 2024, you still have his 5th-year option, which would be a bill of $21.9 million. Now, that decision has to be made this offseason before May. But let's say Atlanta trades for Fields and they pick up that 5th year. And 2024 does not go swimmingly well with Fields. I don't think it's going to be such a hideous disaster where you have to move on from him before 2025. But ultimately, a $21.9 million fully guaranteed contract, well, that's not a great pill to swallow. I don't think that's something that's going to get in the way of Atlanta being successful if they move on from Fields in 2025, right? And if they don't pick up his 5th-year option and he does play well in 2024, well, you could franchise tag him for that bill of $36-ish million, which 21, 36, $15 million difference. I think it's worth just picking up the 5th-year option. If it doesn't work out, okay, kind of out $22 million. I know that's not a light number, but I just don't see it going so horribly wrong in one season where you want to abandon ship after 1 year in Atlanta. I think there'll be a little bit more patience. And $21.9 million quarterback-wise, that's not even top 15 money. So ultimately, it's still a pretty good deal for a starting quarterback. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope everyone is a little bit caught up on all the latest surrounding Justin Fields. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. And we will see you guys tomorrow for our live show, which I should have mentioned earlier. It's going to be a bit earlier in the day, I think around like 1 p.m. Write that down, Cullen, because I got to go on a bachelor party on Thursday night.